Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining episode 2 of the Poker Uncensored podcast. So, Poker Uncensored is a Northeast Poker Unlimited production, and we are going to be talking live here tonight about a variety of topics related to the poker world. About a variety of topics related to the poker world. So, let's hope everybody's tuning on into the stream. We've got people getting ready, people are grabbing their beverages. People are grabbing their snacks. This is the type of thing you might want to grab some popcorn, a nice ice cold beer, and sit down because we'll probably be going for 45 minutes to an hour here. So before we get going, if everybody watched Bachelor in Paradise tonight, you know that they were talking about poker. And since they talked about poker, we're going to talk about poker. Well, actually, I'm just kidding. All right. So about your host. So I'm Matt Sullen. I am a tournament-focused poker player. I had a recent final table finish at the MGM Springfield 100,000 guaranteed tournament. And next up for me, I'll be playing at the Borgata Poker Open. I hope to see some of you in New Jersey. If you're in that area, it'll be great to come meet up. Maybe we can grab a drink. I've lived in several different states across this country: Maryland, Massachusetts, Wisconsin, and now New Hampshire. I work as a technical delivery lead focused on Salesforce, and in my spare time, I love to play poker. And I launched a poker community podcast to give people the opportunity to discuss poker with the freedom to speak their opinions openly and freely. And that's why here at Poker Uncensored, we do not actually censor anyone, right? We allow people to say what they want to say, even if it's not going to be popular, even if it's going to be the controversial stuff, we'll allow it. And then, of course, being an uncensored podcast, we love to have people on the show. We love to have people to talk to us. We love to have questions. So that way that works, you can send us your questions by using YouTube to post those questions directly. You can also post questions to and some people, I guess, are having trouble getting the link. I'm working with behind the scenes here with the Limp Call folks to get it posted up there. But basically, the way that this is going to roll here, you can post your comments directly on YouTube. You can tweet them to me on Twitter. My Twitter account is at Matt Solon. That's MATTSOLEYN. And you can also join the Northeast Poker Unlimited Facebook group. That is facebook.com/group/Northeast Poker Unlimited. Join the group. You can post your questions and ask them. So then, topic number 1 today is we're going to get into this. So, poker player was recently indicted for terrorism in federal court. His name's Kenneth Strauss, and here's what he looks like. Mr. Strauss was the guy who, yes, shipped it all in at the World Series of Poker main event, showed down his cards face up, and it wasn't a strong hand at all. And then he proceeded to pull down his pants. He mooned the people at his table, and he actually took his shoe off and chucked it. Needless to say, that's really not the type of conduct you want to see in the poker room, and he winds up disqualified, gets escorted out of the Rio, but it doesn't end up there because he goes down the strip to the Luxor, jumps on a craps table, proceeds to pull his pants down yet again, and he ends up escorted out of the place. Well, you'd think he might learn his lesson and stop doing crazy stuff, but no, he goes to another casino in Las Vegas, Nevada, Red Rock Casino, and, well, he decides to try to lure an 8-year-old child to his room. That's not going to go over well, so he gets kicked out of there. And of course, now he's indicted on federal terrorism charges for making threats or conveying false information concerning an act of terrorism. But what got this guy here? Well, he decided to send out a tweet that basically said, shootings are taking place all over Las Vegas, mentions the Venetian, says all the casinos that have banned him, which at this point is the Rio and the Luxor. And apparently in Vegas, if you get banned from one Caesars or one MGM property, you're banned from them all. So basically that's like 70% of the strip between MGM and Caesars Entertainment. And, well, needless to say, this didn't go over well, and now he's facing federal charges. So the prosecutor or the state's attorney, I'm not sure exactly what the right title is in the state of Nevada, but, well, actually, it's a federal case, so it would be the United States attorney for the District of Nevada. They said he's a flight risk and a threat to society. Normally, when somebody's in that case, you're going to probably hold them in jail, but the judge decided, no, I'm going to set bail at $150,000. And this guy will be getting arraigned on the 10th of September. So this is a bad guy. I mean, it's pretty clear he doesn't have great intentions. He's making a lot of threats, and that's not the kind of person that you really want to see in the poker community. It makes a lot of us who are honorable players, we follow the law, we treat our fellow players respectably, just look bad when this ends up in the news. And of course, the fact that he's a poker player gets mentioned, of course, in the news. Now, if it was a non-poker player, I am sure they would have mentioned that as well because, it's a pretty severe offense. So, again, if anybody's got questions or they want to chime in here, we're taking your questions. You can chime in. If you're interested in joining and talking live here with us, you can do that. So I've got some folks who are apparently interested in doing that. So remember, you can post your questions on YouTube. You can send them on Twitter. And you can also put them into Facebook. So again, here's a reminder how you can do that. So our next story, we're going to talk about another very, very bad guy once again. And this is a poker player who had over $589,000 in career winnings and managed to wind up arrested for fraud. So his name's Michael Borovitz. He's 44 years old. Here's his picture because, of course, when you get arrested, they love to take a mugshot. And this guy was actually been convicted for fraud in numerous states. He was arrested in August at the Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport. And he would basically come in telling travelers the sob story, trying to get money. And he would, of course, promise to pay it back. Now, unfortunately for this guy, well, he didn't pay it back. And so he left people high and dry. He deceived them. He stole their money. And you might think, hey, this is maybe a poor guy. But no, he's won a ton of money at poker. You look him up on Hendon Mob. He has over $589,000 in career winnings. This is a guy who, when you look at the list in Pennsylvania, he's one of the top 100 winners in the state. Yet he's going around, going to airports, defrauding people. So again, he's going to be facing a judge, and hopefully this guy gets some real justice. Now, unconfirmed reports suggest that he might have some sort of gambling problem and he's punted off all of his money. That could have been the case, which is very unfortunate, but you can't commit theft and start deceiving people. So, a question that just popped up here from Mr. J. Does this guy play at Cheers? Well, Jay, so I assume you're referring to the Cheers Poker Room and Casino, which used to be open in Salem, New Hampshire. Clearly, he's not playing there because that poker room and casino, unfortunately, has closed. And once again, as we move into our next topic here, you can always chime in with your questions and your comments. And you can do that, again, by posting comments directly on YouTube, posting questions on YouTube, tweeting to @MattSolon on Twitter, or again, putting them up in the Northeast Poker Unlimited group on Facebook. We're also apparently live in the Limp Call Poker group. Some of you may know Limp Call recently acquired Northeast Poker Unlimited. And so you can probably post your questions there, and we'll try to put them on the show. But obviously, through YouTube is the best. So continuing on to our next topic of the evening here. And actually, we got another question here. So going back to the last story. So, whoops, let me see here. So Joe Palino says, he wasn't honorable, was he? And I can say, absolutely no, that's not honorable. If you tell somebody you're going to pay them back for something, and I don't care if, you're paying them back $3 because you needed to borrow some money to I don't know, get a cheeseburger at McDonald's, or we're talking, your car breaks, you need 5,000 to get it fixed, or whatever the case may be. I don't know, or maybe you're borrowing big amounts, you're borrowing 100,000, you're borrowing 150,000. When you make that obligation to take that money and pay it back, and you don't do that, that's a huge disgrace. And by the way, for you folks who are on here, I have a great poker player here from New England, Mr. Joe Murphy, who's going to be joining me here Joe, can you hear me? Joe, can you hear me? Well, unfortunately, it looks like Joe is having some audio troubles joining us here today, which is quite the shame. But we will continue on, and hopefully he'll be able to get in here soon or fix his microphone. So, and then it looks like some folks do have questions. Again, feel free to send those in. Yeah, Joe's having some technical difficulties, so hopefully he will be able to rejoin us shortly. All right, so then the next question up here. So I've got one from Joey Kepley. He says, I heard you were a 5-10 player at Encore. Sometime I wish to play at those stakes. May I ask you how much money you need to have to play a 5-10 full time? So Mr. Keppel's question, it's an interesting one. I have played the 5-10 game at Encore. I made a little bit of profit there. But I more so play the cash games, just kind of have fun. I'm a tournament player, and I would say I'm not going to be a regular at the 5-10 table. But if you're looking to play that game full time, the minimum buy-in's $500. You can buy in, I think, all the way up to $1,500. It might be $2,000. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure somebody will fact check me on that one and tell me if I'm wrong. But basically, if you're looking to play at that stakes, you probably need to have a cash poker bankroll somewhere in the order of, I would estimate, as a minimum, we're looking at probably 75,000 to 100,000 to have a decent bankroll for that. So our next question comes from Pete Brennan. Has a player ever sucked out on you? What is your best suck out story in 7 words or less? So yes, players have sucked out on me practically every time I play, especially in New England. My best suck out story, so 7 words or less. So aces, all in, pre, 3-6 off. All right. And then, let's see here. Joe Palino comes in with, Matt, what is the best way to raise strongly? Does that mean I should throw my chips in hard but quite honorably? Yeah, so when we're talking about raising in poker, right? So, let's take no limit Texas Hold'em, right? So let's say the blinds are $2, $5. You need to raise by at least the amount of the blind or the amount of the prior raise, right? So if somebody makes a raise from 5 to 12, that's a raise of $7. Your next raise has to be at least $7, so you've got to go to 19. So that would be a minimum raise. Now, we typically see opening sizes maybe 3 to 4 times the big blinds in that game. It can depend on the table and it can depend on the room. Some rooms are looser, some players are looser. But if you're seeing the typical open be $15, $17, and then you decide, hey, I'm going to raise to 25 or I'm going to raise to 30, that's a stronger raise than what would be typically seen there. And when you're making that strong raise, there's 2 possibilities there that you're sort of representing. One is that, hey, I'm making a strong raise because I have a strong hand. The other one could also be, I'm making a strong raise because I don't want to give people the opportunity to draw out on the cheap. And then there's the third chance, hey, you might just be bluffing. So, that's basically what it is, but it has nothing to do with how quickly you're tossing the chips in. You never need to really throw the chips in. You can just kind of slide them forward a bit. That's really the polite thing to do. So we're going to continue on. And hey, Joe Murphy, are you able to hear me now? Joe, can you hear me now? Can you talk?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Joe. So welcome to the show. So folks, for those who don't know, Joe Murphy, he is one of the greatest cash poker grinders in New England. You can probably catch him some days at Encore Boston Harbor, which we'll actually be talking about later on the show. So Joe, you got any comments on these criminals that we just talked about tonight?
Not really. I mean, I sort of like vaguely read that thing about the guy's tweets, and he just seems like mentally unstable to me.
Yeah, I would suggest that his defense lawyers are probably going to file some sort of, my client is mentally ill and needs to be given help as opposed to sent to the penitentiary. But
I don't think terrorism charges are going to stick on that. Honestly, like I didn't even see any direct threats from what I read. Like it's like obviously crazy aggressive stuff, but
yeah,
I don't know. I
they
don't see any
very
charges.
well. One of the tactics that the federal government uses, they charge people with stuff that's way worse than what they really did, and what they're looking to do is cut a plea bargain. So they'll plea it down to some lesser charge and give the guy, probation or something like that. Because then the state's attorney, or I'm sorry, the U.S. attorney says, "Hey, I got a conviction. I'm awesome." They look good, and obviously the person doesn't get the maximum for whatever terror charges there are.
Well, speaking of criminals, let me just ask a question because I was asking people what they wanted to hear me talk about, and they basically just wanted me to interview you about your life. Have you ever been arrested?
I actually have not been arrested, so I can't really speak to, some people have stories of, I got arrested 7 times. Oh, I've spent time in jail. Unfortunately, I go in and I'm like, oh, yeah, I've never been to jail, so I don't really know what it's like in there, aside from what I see on TV.
Well, for you, I have a feeling it would be pretty brutal, honestly, if you if you went to prison.
Yeah, so the thing
Shit.
is so what I understand from jail, right? If you're a rat, you're basically getting killed. If you're a child molester, you're basically getting killed. If you do something like, I don't know, you rob a bank, they might kind of respect you for that. Or if if you're like Bernie Madoff, the guy didn't rat anybody out, and he did not get beat up in jail. People kind of respected him because he took his sentence. He didn't give up anyone. So
Wait, he died in jail though, right?
no, Madoff is actually still alive. So the guy that died, unfortunately, so his son, both of his sons, unfortunately, died while he was in jail. One had cancer and died. The other actually hung himself because he couldn't live with the shame of what his daddy had done.
Daddy. Now, if you were going to ever get arrested, what do you think you would get arrested for?
I feel like if I'm going to go down, it's going to be something. I would feel like I would want to be going down for something good, right? I don't want to be the moron who went to jail because he got high on cocaine and ran down the street nude. I'd want to be the one who went to jail for something ridiculous and crazy that gets to be on television at least.
Yeah, to be honest, it sounds like you've never done cocaine because that is definitely something good.
Oh yeah, I mean, and actually, we should talk. This is something we should talk about. So to keep this a little on the poker theme, the use of performance-enhancing drugs by poker players. What do you know about that?
I mean, I don't really believe that anything's like a, enhancing drug. Like obviously Adderall, something along those lines. I've dabbled with creatine actually a little bit because studies have shown that really small microdoses of creatine help you with your cognitive function when you're on low amounts of sleep. And obviously, I don't know, how well you know this, but people listening, but I have a really severe sleep disorder. So that's like the major battle in my life in terms of poker and trying to maintain a schedule is sleep. So in the past, I've dabbled with like microdoses of creatine. Obviously, I use caffeine. I've tried to always stay away from stuff like Adderall when playing poker. But, I feel like in terms of performance-enhancing drugs, that's about the extent of it. And with the creatine, I just found that it really made me go to the bathroom a lot. So I just cut that out of my diet a long time ago.
Interesting. So, I mean, otherwise, do you think that performance-enhancing drugs is something being used more by the cash grinders, or is this more people trying to get an advantage in tournament play?
Probably tournament play. Because you have like set hours you have to actually play in a tournament, especially if you're on like a 10-day grind and you have to wake up after playing all night one night to play a final table. So stuff like Adderall and stuff like that. Back on the last note, there actually is one thing I feel like could help you, and that's but really only if you're like an amateur player and sort of playing nervous, is beta blockers. Beta blockers are something that only work like, the first couple of times that you're using them, and that's just basically to cut your nerves.
Interesting. So we have a question from Jay here, who apparently is a big fan of the First Amendment. What's worse, being slow rolled or trying to slow roll somebody else and sucking at it?
I mean, I really
Any
don't
thoughts,
care.
Joe?
I don't really care if people slow roll me. I do it all the time, honestly. At least like not in like the hilarious way where you like have the nuts and you're just like, purposely like making the person wait on you or whatever. But I'm always going to show my hand last in almost all instances, just to make sure I'm getting all the information that I'm paying for.
Yeah. So I have a different opinion. You're breaking up a little bit here, but I have a different opinion on slow rolling. I think it's very dishonorable. I think when it comes time for showdown, everybody should just show down their hand, let the cards speak, and then the dealer can award the pot where it's supposed to go. But it's ridiculous that you have people that they've got, somebody's got the obvious winner, they've got the nuts, and they make some guy show down his middle pair, and obviously it's no good. Now, granted, that guy probably shouldn't have called off there, but whatever. I just don't like slow rolling. So I'll show it down. I never actually try to slow roll somebody. The only times I've done it has been when I bet with something. I kind of bet with like a bluff, and I get called. And at that point, my assumption is, well, I probably lose because I was bluffing. And then it turns out that the person called me with like king high and bottom pair was good.
Yeah, I mean, there are some instances that you don't want to slow roll because bad players misread their hands and even good players misread their hands. So if you're like, slow rolling, they may not realize that they hit a 4-card flush, they hit a straight. So you have to be careful with it. But honestly, I'm playing to make money, so I will withhold my hand and try to get whatever. Even if I know I'm good, you want to know how they played certain hands in certain spots. Any information you can get is going to help you in the long run. So a lot of times it just makes sense to make them show that info to you when you've paid for it.
Yeah. So here's a question coming in from Joey Keppel, and this one is directed at you, Joe. So this question is, Joe Murphy, I always hear from players that they hate sitting with you at the table. Could you please explain why and what you do to the other players?
I think that's a complicated question. I do think that needling people in certain aspects is part of my overall strategy. I also think that I just bring, when I'm at my best, a very intense sort of attitude to the table. And, that can rub people the wrong way. Also, I don't take challenges very well. So if like somebody like starts talking shit, I really sometimes I lose it, and it's even to my disadvantage. I'll start, talking shit and talking about how I'm better than them. And typically that will set me off and help me play better. But you actually walked by last night right after something like that happened, where I basically just told everybody at the table, like, hey, like I'm the best player at this table. Like, yeah, I might be stuck, but I'm gonna I'm gonna come back and take everybody's money. Most people's reaction to that, they thought it was funny, and I just tell them, like, look, if I didn't think I was this player, I wouldn't be here. Like, whenever you do anything in life, I feel like you should try to be the best and feel like you're the best at what you do. But there was another guy at the table who was basically just like, fuck you, like I play, you're an asshole, and you wouldn't be sitting here with $100 playing 1-3 if you're the best player in the room. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you can go ask any 5-10 player, and they'll tell you that you should be sitting here deep or playing higher stakes if you're the best player in the room. Like, blah blah blah. So, definitely for a number of reasons, I tend to set people off. I actually happen to think that I'm pretty likable and tend to be pretty likable playing live poker. But I definitely have a certain image, especially online and in the local groups, where I talk a lot of shit, and there's a lot of people who don't like me. I don't think that they really know the real me.
But here's the question. So if you are one of the best cash players in New England, why aren't you playing at those higher stakes? Why not sit down in the VIP room in Encore and play 10-20?
Well, first of all, it already came down to bankroll. Like you even said, and answered Joey's question earlier, I would feel comfortable playing full-time at 5-10 if I had $80,000. I would want to have 2 max buy-ins at least and 20 total sessions, and that would be about $80,000. bankroll for higher stakes. And when it comes down to it, even though I do have a bankroll right now for 2.5 and even just taking shots at 5.10, I had a rough week this last week, but I'm making more money at 1.3 than most people can make at 2.5, and the games are really soft, and I am a bum hunter. So, it's the same reason that, and I won't mention names, but I know a lot of people who are known for being 2.5 players will throughout the week play 1.3. That game's just much softer, and if you can make $30 to $40 an hour playing 1.3 and you're comfortable with that, then, I think that makes sense. Also, I did have a very rough year, and, I'm comfortable with my savings, and I don't have much overhead because I live my life to play poker full time. But, I just, I got off a rough year like 6 months out of last year, and I was hurt and sick for a lot of the year. So, I'm just very conservative with my money. I don't know if that makes any sense, but part of it is I'm comfortable beating 1.3, and I'm very good at that meta, and I'm making more money than a lot of 2.5 players do. And the other half is, it's just a conservative approach.
Yeah. So once again, folks, if you want to chime into the show, right, if you want to join us on the air here, let us know. But you can hit me on Twitter at Matt Sullen. You can post comments on YouTube. You can also post them in the Northeast Poker Unlimited Facebook group. And since we are now a part of Limp Call, you can post them in Limp Call as well if you're in that group. So the questions keep rolling in. Obviously, if they're ridiculously off-topic questions or flagrant trolling, we are not going to put them up here. For example, Joe Paolino, your suggestion that we should try Viagra, not going in. Not that there's anything wrong with Viagra. It's a FDA-approved medication. Continuing on, so let me see here. So we have a question again from Jay. It's about bankrolls, right? Max buy-in in Encore 510 is 1,500. How big of a bankroll do you need? So earlier I suggested you probably want something in the order of 75,000 to 100,000 to be bankrolled to play that game. Joe, you suggested about 80,000.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the max buy-in is 2,000, but I guess I could be wrong about that.
That's a good question. So let me grab my my phone here and just pull up Poker Atlas here, because that will give us a definitive answer before somebody jumps in, fact checks me, and says that I'm an idiot because I said it was 1,500 and it's 2,000 or whatever the case may be. So,
and basically what I'm saying is, if I'm basically saying 20 sessions. So if you're going to say fire an average of 2 max buy-ins per session, and the max buy-ins 2K, that's 4,000 per session times 20 sessions. That's why I said 80. And I think that when you talk to and you read a lot of the literature that's out there for cash, 20 sessions is pretty reasonable. If you're multi-tabling online, you probably want to do more than that relative to how many tables you're playing, etc. But ultimately, it's all going to come down to your personal style and your variance.
Yep. And by the way, we were able to confirm on Poker Atlas, it's 500 to 1,500 for 510 no limit Texas Hold'em and Encore Boston Harbor. Other casinos, though, do run that game where you can buy in for larger. I have seen 510 actually running where there is no limit on the buy-ins, and I've seen it with 2,000 at other places. All right. So let's see here. So actually right now we don't have any additional questions. Again, folks, you can send us questions. I'm going to move us on to the next topic tonight, and that is actually related to Encore Boston Harbor and some negative changes in the poker room. So, Joe, you and I both have played at Encore. Overall, it's a luxury poker room. It's got great seats, great tables, but they recently cut back the beverage service for players, and this was something that some people were not happy about. Other people just don't care about. But what they've done is they've gotten rid of bottled beer. They only have Bud Light and Heineken on draft, which actually is ridiculous for the Boston area because you should usually have like a Harpoon option or a Sam Adams. I think they have that at MGM. And then there's no more espresso or cappuccino, which that seems kind of weird because those are relatively cheap drinks to produce, right? It's not as expensive as giving people beer. But they cut that out. They also cut back having premium liquor, so you can't get Grey Goose vodka, you can't get Hendrick's gin. And to be honest, those aren't even super premiums. Those are just kind of typical liquors that you would see. Wynn management said that they're trying to get Encore up to the Wynn standard. In Las Vegas, though, people can get premium beverages without an issue. So how is that moving towards the standard? If they're trying to go to the Wynn standard and they're cutting back, does that make sense to you?
Well, if you're asking me, I think first of all, the cappuccino thing, I think it's more to do with the timing because the waitresses actually make those drinks themselves. So that's why in the poker room they can't make those drinks. As far as Las Vegas goes, that's a different market. So you have to understand like you're going to get different comps in a Vegas market. Um, this honestly isn't something that I'm comfortable. Like we've talked about it privately, and like I've busted some balls about this at the casino, but I don't want to talk about it too much publicly because I do play there literally almost every day of the week, and obviously I'm disappointed I can't get a cappuccino, and I'm disappointed about the red card service. But this isn't really it's not anything that's like super important to me. I guess I don't drink alcohol specifically when I'm playing poker.
Right. So that's and that's I mean your style of play. So for those who don't know, you're playing essentially as your job, right? You don't have a typical job that you go to 9 to 5. You're playing poker to make a living and pay your bills. Other people are not in that case. They're just going to have fun. They don't care if they punt off a few $100, and they're going to want to have a few beers.
Right. I do think it would be better for the action to have better drink service.
I agree.
I want to keep people as drunk as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would be great if they would roll this change back and go back to what they've got in Vegas. It doesn't make sense, and especially when if you're a player who's not just a poker exclusive player, so you're playing the tables and you're playing the slots, and you're sitting at a slot and they'll give us Grey Goose there, but they're not going to do it in the poker room. It just cheapens the experience. Now, one good thing that Encore has done in the poker room, they are starting tournament play within a couple of weeks, so that'll be a positive for the room. And actually, a few people are asking us questions here. By the way, if anybody wants to join in and be live on the air with Mr. Murphy and I, let us know. We can send you the link. You can join the stream and you can talk to us live here. So the question that came in here, Joey Keppel asks, has there been an actual date set that the Encore is going to start running tourneys? We have been told by one of the staff members there that they're looking to start them on September 15th, and that they're going to put that update on Poker Atlas with all of the details. So I guess just keep checking Poker Atlas until they post these tournaments. Joe, do you have any thoughts on what they're going to run as far as like daily tournaments or even weekend tournaments?
Not really. I think a event right off the bat will probably be daily events. I don't know what the times for those will be. Probably somewhere in the $100 to $200 range for dailies. I don't think they're going to have any big events probably until at least a couple months out. But I mean, that's just total speculation on my part.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense because when you think about what they run at Wynn in Vegas, what they run at Foxwoods, the events they're typically running for their dailies are like 120, 160, maybe 200, and then the bigger events, I think once they make sure they've got all their dealers good to go on tournament, they might look at doing something big. And I think that if they time it right, so not during the Borgata Poker Open, not during a big Foxwood series, they could draw a lot of people to come to Boston to play poker.
Yeah, speaking of the Borgata Poker Open, I know you're like really big on that event, but a lot of people from here are going to go all the way to New Jersey to go play in some poker series. I'm pretty sure you're generally the only one I know who would be interested in going to New Jersey for an event like that. That's my 2 cents. So I think you're sort of representing the reach of something like that, but
right. I do think one of the challenges is that so when you look at Atlantic City, a lot of players are able to get discounted rooms or comped rooms down there. The Boston market's different because Encore is only going to really be comping the top end of the market, and our hotel situation in the city is not great. So it would be more expensive for people to travel, and those expenses would run up and make it harder for people to be essentially profitably playing those tournaments. So then, let's see, another question we have here. So this is coming from Joey Keppel, and he's asking about one of Encore's competitors. So what do you think is going to happen to Hampton Falls, since I've heard they barely get cash tables anymore? So Joe, I'll let you hit this one first. Any thoughts on that? What's going to happen to the poker room in Hampton Falls?
I haven't played there as much lately. I do think that they could still be competitive in the market. I think a lot of times the New Hampshire rooms are a little bit slow to make change, and it's sort of like a front runner market where, like obviously right now Chasers is the premium New Hampshire poker room, or one of them anyways, and a lot of the newer cool stuff that's being done is being done first at Chasers, and then other rooms are doing exactly the same thing to compete.
Right.
That's really not, I think, the direction these rooms should be taking. I think some New Hampshire room should be trying something new. Like, even if it's failed, I came out a year ago and said, hey, short deck is like another cool thing. It's a heavy action game. And I do think if you brought that in with the right rule set, it could be something different, even a novelty for a little bit. I think, New Hampshire rooms have the ability of running 1-3. That could be like a really interesting change. You could be running like a 1-3 with exactly the same setup basically as Encore, doing $100 minimum, even allowing a button straddle, like really get some different action going. Instead of doing high hands, you could do something like splash pots. You could do, you could even have a room that does just a $1 rake and does like a splash pot every half an hour or something like that, or every hour. So I think that they definitely can compete. I'm not sure what's going to happen. It seems like ownership there is a little bit stagnant on both the rule changes and updates with the room and stuff like that. And it's sad to me because that was always my primary place to go play. They were really known for tournaments too, and I just don't really see a big market there going forward. But I do think they have the ability to compete if they were to bring in somebody to kind of run things and do some drastic changes and be like on the cutting edge as opposed to being, reactionary to other rooms in the area and trying to do the exact same thing.
And that's something, the Hampton Falls room, you go in there and it just looks like it's a dated room, right? The tables are out of date. The seats are out of date. They don't have USB chargers at the tables like they have at, Boston Billiards, Manchester, Encore, MGM, etc. And I feel like the lack of investment into that room is going to hurt them because 2 miles away, or maybe not even 2 miles, you've got Seabrook, which got acquired and then has been putting millions of dollars into building basically a massively improved facility, new tables, new seating, and they're actually working on trying to improve some of their tournament structures. And I think they could draw a lot of that tournament crowd away from Hampton Falls if they do a good job there.
Yeah, I definitely think that Seabrook is, from what I understand, probably going to be the one to win out in that market at this point. I don't think both of those rooms are going to exist in 2 years' time. If I were to speculate, I would say right now I would probably put my money on Seabrook, actually, as surprising as that is to most people. But I just think that when it comes down to it, it comes down with your vision and the direction you're heading, and being able to compete in that market. And I just don't see any of the rooms really being on the cutting edge, with the exception of maybe Boston Billiard and Chasers, and everybody else is sort of being reactionary to that and running identical promos and basically doing a worse version of the same exact.
And on the cash poker side, right, you look at what's going on. Over at Hampton Falls this evening, they have one table of 1-2 running. They don't have anything else running. You look at Chasers, they have 4 tables running in total. There's no Omaha running. There's no short deck running. There's just 1-2, 3 tables of that, and a table of 2-5. And that was a room that used to actually at times be full to the point where the wait list would have dozens of people on it. I actually remember one time I wanted to go play there, and the wait list was so long, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to drive to Manchester because by the time I clear the wait list, I could get a seat up there. But the same thing, Manchester tonight, they have 2 tables. They've got 1-2 and 2-5. Meanwhile, Encore has over 25 tables going. They've got Omaha running. They've got Stud running. They've got 5-10 running. And those just aren't running in New Hampshire. I feel like what's going to happen is players say, hey, the games I want aren't running. The stakes I want aren't running. They're just going to skip the New Hampshire rooms and go to Encore.
Yeah, that's obviously been the trend. I think it will help if some of these rooms will peter out. You'll have more of the New Hampshire action, condensing in one place.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I mean, you could see that. I could see that happening. I also think that the regulatory climate in New Hampshire damages some of these rooms because they're not able to run some of the games that people want. They're required to close at 1 a.m. So if you decide it's Friday night or Saturday night and it's 11 o'clock and you want to play a few hours of poker, you could go to billiards, but they're going to start shutting the tables down at 12:30. Same thing at Chasers, so you might as well go down to Encore. And if you play for 3 hours, they give you free parking. And if you don't, you can use $1 of comps, and you're going to get treated a little bit better there in the sense that, hey, at least you can get Bud Light and Heineken on draft without having to pay.
Until 4 in the morning.
Right, until 4 in the morning. But now, I mean, I would love to know who still wants to be drinking at 5 in the morning, right? So I think their hours that they can't serve are 4 a.m. to 8 a.m.
Yep.
Am I correct there? So,
Yep.
I mean, the crowd that wants to drink at 5 a.m., I imagine one that's a fairly small crowd. I mean, I guess, like, if I was coming to play, like, I don't know, breakfast time poker, maybe I'd want a mimosa at 7:30, but I just, personally, I don't see myself ever showing up to the poker room that early in the morning. But
I view things completely differently there. For me, it's not, who's going to want to go there and drink at that time. It's who I want to play against, And I'll tell you, you say if you go at 11 o'clock, you go to Boston Billiards Club, you only get an hour and a half of play before they start shutting down tables. I think the prime time to go and play on a weeknight at Encore is 10:30 at night. And you play till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's where you're going to find a lot of the degenerates, a lot of the softest action, the drunkest players. And while I'm not going to be wanting to drink it in the morning, the guys who do want to be drinking at 3:30 in the morning are exactly the people I want to be playing against. So that's the big draw for me, and the ability to have people out drinking till 4 in the morning is the fact that it really spurs some of that loose, drunk, crazy action.
All right. So let's see. Moving on to a couple of questions here. So we have one question that says, so Pete Brennan is saying, who would you rank as the top 10 players in New Hampshire? Who do you think are the top 5 most overrated players in New Hampshire? And how much can you bench? So, that's a really regionally limited question. But if I had to go through and say, who do I think are the top 10 players in New Hampshire? So I'm just going to throw myself at the top of the list, and nobody's even close. So, problem's done.
All right, obvious troll answer to be ignored. Do you want to give it a real answer there?
So yeah, all right. So I was kidding there. So that's obviously the case. But yeah, Joe, take a shot at it.
Oh man, I don't know about the top 10 players. As far as the 5 most overrated players go, I don't even want to say names. I have so many goddamn enemies already. But I do think a lot of the people who get touted as being players, they're probably losing players. I don't even want to out anybody as like the top 10 players in New Hampshire. And that's also going to be...
Well, I'll take a shot at the top 10, right? So I think if I was to name the top 10, I would say, so Dan Chalifour, Michael Drummond, James Gunther, Silas Watson, Jeff Cohen, Daniel D. Pascal, Robert Brown, Peter Gilmore, Rodney Legendare, Paul Freeman, and Glenn McCaffrey. There's your top 10.
Are you just naming people off of Hendon Mob?
Right, I'm looking at the top winningest players in the state. There's your top 10. Because that's the only objective measure I've got. I guarantee you
3/4 of the people you just named are losing players. Without even knowing most of them, I can guarantee you. No, they're not the winningest. They have the top results.
They're the winningest in the state because they've got the top ranking.
And you don't understand it all. You don't understand at all how poker profitability works. Look, some of the best tournament players are going to have between a 15 and 20% ROI. If you're going to go up on that list, what is their lifetime cash?
So their lifetime cash. So I mean, the top guy on the list, he has 739,000 in lifetime.
And how many years do you think he did 739,000 over?
I mean, let's take a look here. So his Hendon data goes back to 2009, so over 10 years.
So in 10 years, $75,000 a year. So if he has like if he has like an excellent estimate of 20% ROI on that money. I mean, how much do you think he makes per year? 15,000 per year? Like, what do you think he's actually profiting?
Yeah,
because I'll tell you, I made $13,000 in February alone playing cash. So I don't know how you could think that those are the best players in New Hampshire. Like, seriously, most of those people are probably down lifetime playing tournaments. Tournament players really don't make anything close to what cash players make. I think you overestimate it because you can win 100K in an event. You're not factoring in all the expenses that go into that, and I can just pretty much guarantee you that those aren't the best players in New Hampshire. Like, honestly, I would take in as much as a tournament player.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Ask me the question.
Well, how would we objectively get a list of who are the top 10 players in the state? Because I feel like we don't have the data, right? There's no tracker of who's a winner at cash and who's a loser. There's no, somebody could have a couple of really big wins, and every other time they punt, and they could be down, $500,000 in their life. But we won't know that because there's no place that aggregates all of that data together.
You don't need data. I'm a winning poker player. It's how I support myself. And at the end of the day, I can just tell who's a winning player, and I can just tell, having played a sparing amount against guys like Joey Panik and Sean Miller, that they're winning cash game players. And honestly, as much as me and David Mock really haven't gotten along, I can guarantee that skill-wise, he's as most tournament players in New Hampshire, and he has some results to back it up. And he seems to be, I played him heads up a few times. He obviously seems to know what he's doing. But, as overall poker players, I think the thing is, a lot of the best poker players are really unknowns. And this goes back to, if you're such a good poker player, why don't you play 2-5 or 5-10 or whatever? Skill-wise, I think I'm right on the same par with a lot of these players. And, I'm making more money playing 1-3 than all of the guys you just named off the Hendon Wob top 10 list. I just am. I mean, they might have some big tournament cashes, but that doesn't mean that they're actually making money. And maybe some of those guys are better poker players than me, but I would bet my money that at least more than half or 3/4 of those people you just named are probably down on their life playing poker tournaments.
Yeah.
And objectively, I do have stats to back that up. I've seen back-end stats on online poker websites. I've seen with a 10% rate how many people profit 10%. And even the people who have some of the biggest cashes that I know, they're some of the worst fucking players. They just are. They just are willing to gamble and play poker tournaments outside of their comfort level, and they'll fire all these 500, 1,000 events. That doesn't mean they're good poker players. 5% ROI, or they could be negative, or they can only cash in 9% of their tournaments. They're not profitable players doing that, but they might have a couple of big wins, and on their lifetime they might have $100,000 in cashes, but still be stuck $500K.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, until there's a way to basically figure out, hey, let's take every single time you bought in and every cash out and add it up and come to a sum, you're not really going to be able to figure out who's the best and most winning player definitively. It's really based on a lot of conjecture, what people claim, and of course, a lot of losing players, they actually think that they're winners, which is crazy. But it's actually probably good for people who truly are winners, because we keep those people in poker because they're going to continue to play because they think they're making some money when they're actually punting.
So on that note, are you up lifetime in your life playing poker?
So I did not strictly track my poker play since the time I started, but I basically.
What does your gut tell you?
My gut tells me that I'm probably slightly up on it, but since I started officially tracking every single time I played, I have roughly 1,400 in profit, and that's including expenses to travel to play tournaments.
And how much? What do you think your ROI is? How much have you spent in that time? Have you spent at least $14,000?
Oh, the ROI is abysmal. If I think I could probably calculate this actually and go the overall ROI to only have a profit of $1,400 after playing poker many times a week this entire year basically makes it look like I'm earning $3 an hour, right? Or something ridiculously low. I might as well go apply for a minimum wage job working at Walmart, because I'll actually probably make more money doing that than playing poker. Now, granted, I don't play it professionally. I have a full-time day job. I can pay all my bills off of that. I'm playing poker more for fun. So I want to take shots at the big stuff where I could actually win 200 grand or $1 million and have a chance at life-changing sums.
Yeah, that's a healthy way of looking at it. It's just, that's kind of like my point with the whole thing. Like, I've spoken with you about this before privately, and, definitely view it as a hobby, play for fun. I think more people should do that. Poker is a really powerful thing, and you can lose a lot of money as well a lot of money. More than that, people will lose money playing with new casino. So that's just the way it is. It's very, very uncommon to be able to make enough money to pay your bills each hour or whatever it is. But
yeah, it's definitely harder than people would think it was.
I'm pretty sure Paul Friedman's probably a winning player. I haven't played with him in years, but he's on that list. He's probably a winning player. If Glenn is who I think he is, he's probably a winning player too. A few of those other names I don't even recognize, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. So on to our next question here. So Joe Palino wants to know, who is the sexiest poker female out there? So we're going to get bashed for probably being sexist here because we're not commenting on who are the sexiest men in poker. Well, actually, I know I am. But let's take a shot at this. And hey, it's Poker Uncensored, so why not? So, Joe, you got any thoughts here?
Yeah, I've always been impartial, respectfully, I've always been impartial to Liv Boeree. I think that's how you say her last name. She's always been my favorite. And she also has a personality that I like vibe with. Like, she likes going to like Burning Man and like doing sort of those like kind of like crunchy hippie sort of activities. So I don't know. Like, I've always been sort of partial to her. I could probably think of the sexiest male. Matt Damon's a poker player. So he's probably one of the sexiest males.
That's true, and a lot of women like him. So, I actually, so it's funny you said Liv Boeree, because I was going to end up kind of going to the same spot because she pulled in, a huge amount of money in terms of her winnings. I think she's got over 1.8 million, maybe even more than that, right, in terms of winning. So not only is she an attractive poker player, but she's a real winner when it comes to playing at the tables, and she's probably got more poker skill than I've got.
Oh, she definitely has more poker skill than you. Hey, but here, controversial opinion, she's probably a losing poker player.
Whoa, 1.8 million plus in wins, and she's a losing player?
Who the fuck cares? Look at the events she plays. I'll tell you where she wins. Sponsorships. She's getting bought into a lot of those events. She's what is she? She's on like PokerStars team or something, right? Like, you make a lot of money from sponsorships. It doesn't mean you're a winning player. As a matter of fact, I think 2016, 17, and 2018, Daniel Negreanu averaged $2.8 million a year and wins, but he was down an average of like $80,000 per year over that 3-year span and lost all 3 years. So, $1.8 million in lifetime earnings. Look, even if she's averaging 20%, like that's probably over 10 years, even 20% ROI, that's only $360,000 in profit. So it's not even like at a 20% ROI that she'd be like this massive profitable player. But I would bet my money on the fact that she's probably down in that time span.
Oh, we are going to get killed for answering this question, but hey, it's Poker Uncensored, and we're not afraid of the hard-hitting questions. So Jay asks, what is the worst poker room / casino in New England? So, God, this is a tough one. I almost want to give the award here to Twin River. And the reason why...
No way.
Well, here's why, right? So Twin River, they're poorly managed from a poker room perspective. Their dining options are subpar. Now, they do have free parking, which is a positive. But also the fact that, one, they don't comp any beverages that are alcoholic to players, which MGM, Foxwoods, Mohegan, and Encore do. So I feel like that puts them on maybe worse in New England.
Probably the worst major casino in New England. The worst poker room is probably that little dingy place on Hampton Beach. I don't even remember the name of it. They have like 2 tables or something. Everyone hears a story about that place. Somebody who felt like they were cheated. Also, one.
I know. Is it Ocean Gaming or whatever?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've never been there.
And also, so I can't. One in Western New Hampshire that. Some of the stories I've heard, I've never been there either. Yeah, maybe it's not King Casino, but there was another one that was like they used to run some tournaments back in the day, and I just got to play like River or
Yeah,
something. I don't know. It was in Western New York.
right. And so I get what
Historically,
you're saying.
obviously, Seabrook has always been awful.
That's true. Now, have you been to Seabrook since they started the renovation process?
I haven't started in like 6 years.
Okay, so the first time I went there before they did any renovations, I basically said, well, this room is awful. I don't know why anybody ever goes here. Now, once they've done the renovation in there, the place actually looks really good. And it's actually a place that I would consider going and playing in, even though for me it's a bit of a hike, right? I can get to Encore faster than I can get there.
Yeah, and then lastly, I was going to throw out basically any casino that's associated with Manchester Poker Room. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I'm just really not a fan of it, and
Now,
I'll never play there.
that's gonna. A lot of people are gonna not be a fan of that opinion because Manchester's been drawing crowds of 100 plus for their tournaments in the middle of the week. So, what caused? Well, and folks, we have lost Joe. Unfortunately, he has been disconnected. Interestingly, well, and I did not cut his mic, so I don't know what the deal is there. So, Joe, are you with us? Joe? Joe, you there? Yeah, we have lost Joe. Well, that is unfortunate. So I guess I'm gonna have to continue this thing on by myself. But hey, if anybody else wants to jump on in and talk, we can do that. Actually, hey Joe, are you there? Joe, you there?
Hey, what's up? Sorry, I got booted. My internet sucks at my house.
Clearly,
Can you
it
hear
does.
me?
So, yep, I can hear you, but we don't have an internet sponsor right now, so I can't, give a plug for anybody switching their internet connection to something that works better. But yeah, clearly your internet sucks. So moving on to another topic here today. So topic number 4, the 2019 Borgata Poker Open. So that kicked off today in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And some of the highlights are that. So this week, the deep stack kickoff, it's $1 million guarantee, $600 entry. This is actually a tournament that I'll be playing in. I'm going to be firing on Thursday evening at this one. I'm hoping to make it to day 2, and then I'm hoping to make it to day 3, which is the final table. And if I make it to that final table, I should be looking at 5 figures, maybe even 6 figures of profit, which will be amazing. Also on the schedule, the Almighty Stack. That's next week, September 10 to 14. That's a $750,000 guarantee, which is an increase from when they ran this at the Summer Open, and a $400 entry. And then live streamed the World Poker Tour Championship, $3 million guarantee, but a much higher $3,500 entry, and that's running 915 to 920. The Borgata has a record where they've always been beating their guarantee numbers. So I feel like for those in the Northeast, this is a great series to play. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I like that they do live blogging of that series. They post a lot of the results. They post, pictures during that. And I think it helps to draw interest to it and also give people who are winning that a nice bit of recognition.
Now, what's the chance of every final table in $1 million guarantee? Put a percentage on it.
Sorry, what was that? You actually
What do you
broke
think
up.
the percentage chances of you final? Yeah, I believe it. My internet sucks. What do you think the chances are of final table in that tournament?
Well, I think it's going to be a tough tournament. I would say that it's going to be, it's going to be challenging to beat that entire field. You're going to have a lot of skilled players there. It's definitely a very different level of play compared to what you see in a lot of these events that take place up in New Hampshire. So I would say, I've got maybe a 3% chance to make the final table.
3%?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. How many people are in the event?
Well, it's unclear how many people are actually going to be in this event. So, I think in order to hit the guarantee, they're going to need to have 1,852 people register, 1,852 entries, because it's actually a re-entry allowed. So, there's some people that they're going to go down there and they're going to be prepared to fire 5 to 6 bullets at this thing, right? Some people might even fire 5 to 6 in one flight. But you get that number of entries, that's what the guarantee is.
Yeah, but are you factoring in the rake when you come up with that number?
I am actually. So yeah, I factored in the rake. So I believe it's 540 to the prize pool, 60 in rake.
Man, I would have to really think about it. But yeah, no, I think you have less than a 1% chance of final tabling that thing.
Well, I mean, if we were to look at so the final table is going to be 10 players, and if we look at the pure numbers, even let's assume a minimum, right? So I mean, only 0.54% of the field makes it to the final table. So I think my level of skill is probably a little bit above the average player. So I would actually more so give myself maybe a 1.1% chance. That's probably a more accurate assessment.
More than twice as skilled as the main player of the tournament.
I'm saying that if you look at the average player in that tournament, I'm above the average.
You're saying you're more than twice as good as the average player in that tournament. The best player in the tournament has 2 times skill as the average player in the tournament.
So you unfortunately broke up there again, but you're saying the best player in the tournament probably has twice the skill of the worst?
The best player the best player in the tournament probably doesn't have twice the skill of the average player in the tournament. You're saying that you have 2 times skill edge on the average player in the tournament, but I'm saying the best player in that tournament times skill edge on the average player in the tournament. It's maybe like 10, 15%.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So really, my chance to final table this is probably under 1% then.
Yeah, it's probably less than 0.5% if I were to estimate it.
Yeah. So we have a couple of questions that came in here. So let's see. So one here is that so Pete Brennan wants to know why you stopped talking about Manchester and what your kind of or Joe Palino wants to know why you stopped talking about it, and basically Pete Brennan wants you to tell the Manchester story. So what is the issue that you've got here with the Manchester Poker Room?
I felt like I was cheated, and that brought attention multiple times and never got a response. That's really all I'm going to say about that.
All right, so pulling the old Forrest Gump
story, and they've known the story for about a year.
Yeah, the old Forrest Gump line, and that's all he's got to say about that. All right, so continuing on to the next topic here. So let's see here. Jay, who is a big supporter clearly of the First Amendment, he is saying that he doesn't understand people saying that they're hoping to make it to day 2 or hoping to make a good run or cash, because the mentality should always be to win, right? Well, yeah, the mentality is always to win, but reality is when you're sitting there and you're short stacked, yeah, you'd like to win, but when you're sitting there short stacked, sometimes you're happy to just make it to cash. It's a weird feeling, but when you've been playing 9 hours, 10 hours, and you're short stacked, you think that you could go out anytime because you've got 6 big blinds and you got to ship it all in and you're probably getting called. The fact that you can then actually make it to the bubble, it's kind of reassuring to say, hey, I didn't waste all this time playing to not make any money. Joe, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just don't really have anything to say about that.
I see. All right. So
I know, I'm a great guy.
No, so I mean, now we're going to take, so we've gone through all the content we had for tonight. We're going to go to open questions and listener calls. So as I'm looking here, I don't see any call or any, actually, I do see one question that has come in via Facebook. So we have somebody saying that. Let's see. So somebody asked, am I going to buy a decent phone for Joe? So the answer to that is if I ship it and I win this thing down at the Borgata, I promise I will buy Joe a brand new iPhone. I guess XS is the latest one, and then hopefully, then again, that still won't fix the problem if you're connected to garbage internet, because you're just going to have a decent phone that still has garbage internet behind it. But if I win this thing, I'll pick up the cost to buy Joe an iPhone XS. And also, I'm probably going to be buying it myself. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say if you
note,
can actually even hear. Yeah, so I do have shitty internet, and that's part of me like playing poker. Is I literally the only expenses that I have that I know I got to pay every month. I have my cell phone bill, my rent payment.
And needless to say, his internet is so bad he just got dropped off from the sound. Joe, are you back with us? All right, so I will ask my assistant to document in the lessons learned from today's podcast episode. Make sure that your guests don't have absolute garbage internet connections, because it will cause them to get kicked off the podcast in the middle of a discussion. Joe, are you back with us?
That just happened again.
Yeah, it happened. It happened again. All right, so let's see. Looking at a couple of the questions that we have here. So I've got Joe Palino asking if Joe is a robot. I can confirm he's not a robot. His voice sounds robotic because he's got a terrible internet connection. That's the problem. So, does anybody have any final questions? Does anybody else want to join us here and come on live on the podcast? We're open for all topics. Anything poker related, we can touch on. Nope. All right. Well, if you do want to come on, of course, you can reach out via Twitter or Facebook to try to join the show. And that is all that we had for content. So if nobody's got any questions, we're going to be able to wrap this thing up. Joe, do you have any final words that you want to talk about, or any final topics, any final words for our viewers?
No, I mean there were some people who asked me to ask some questions of you, but I don't really know if you want me to, and they're not really poker related anyways. So.
Oh, here we go. Yep, we got a couple. So, all right, I've got Joey Keppel asking here: have you ever folded KK pre? So basically, King, second best starting hand in No Limit Texas Hold'em. And have you ever folded it pre? I have. I actually folded this pre one time because I knew that the guy either had aces or kings. If he had kings, I'm calling off my stack for a chop. And if he has aces, he obviously has me owned. So I folded king pre. The action was like I raise, some guy re-raises, this guy ships it all in, and this is like a nit player. The only way he's 4-bet shipping it all in there is if he has aces or kings. I make a good read. I fold. He has aces. I don't lose my money. Joe, have you ever folded KK pre?
Yeah, I mean he's trolling you with that question.
Oh, he is trolling. Well, that's I don't see that as a troll. I mean, I'd say to fold KK pre, you've got to be able to put your opponent on a very narrow range, and if you've got that skill, that's pretty good in poker, I think.
Yeah, I mean I have folded kings pre-flop, but that's his like go-to stereotypical troll. That's been like an inside joke for Limp Call for years.
Yeah, they do love their trolls. So the next question that we've got here, so Joe Palino wants to know, what is Joe wearing? I'm going to assume pants.
No, I'm actually not wearing pants. I'm actually lying in bed in my underwear.
Interesting. So he's doing the podcast with no pants. Hey, this is the Poker Uncensored podcast, although we don't do video with our guests, but since it is uncensored, you don't even need underwear if you wanted to do that.
Not taking my underwear off.
Yeah, myself, I am wearing shorts and I am wearing a t-shirt. So that's what I'm wearing because it's still warm out. I mean, I'm not going to switch into pants when I'm sitting at home until it gets to be more of a wintry condition. All right. So then our next question, Pete Brennan wants to know: do you have a lucky poker hand or an unlucky poker hand? I would say that I don't have any. Actually, I would say I do have an unlucky poker hand. So Ace Jack, regardless of whether it was suited or not, it seemed like every single time I got Ace Jack in a tournament, it would send me out of that tournament. So it was basically Ace Jack would only seem to get called by Ace Queen, Ace King, or a pocket pair. When it was a pocket pair, I wouldn't hit my ace. And when it was Ace King or Ace Queen, those would come up as the winner. Do you seeing any hands as being lucky or unlucky?
Well, I don't view poker like that. I just love my magical card protectors, and they're supposed to actually be blessed by a shaman in South America and have magical powers. I don't necessarily believe in that stuff, but my favorite hand is pocket aces.
Oh, you can't go wrong with aces. I mean, they're always a nice hand to get in with. Unfortunately, sometimes it gets called by worse, and the draws just hit, and people you get sucked out on. So here's another question. Andrew Burns wants to know what's up with Cheers. Any new news? So I don't have any new news of Cheers. The last that we heard with Cheers, they were in a dispute with their landlord, and they ended up having to close down. One of the people that I've tried to get to come onto the podcast is Dan D'Andrio, also known as Puck. He is the owner of Cheers. Unfortunately, he is unable to come on the show at this time. He actually has a lot of I think pending litigation and lawsuits to deal with, and so he really can't comment until all of the court stuff comes through and settles up. And hopefully at that point he'll want to come on the podcast and tell the story, because I think it's going to be an interesting story. I think it was an unfortunate closure. It put a lot of people out of work. I know a lot of the dealers and the floor people there have found new jobs and new careers, which is good. But I don't have any news on the room. I at this point I doubt it's going to be reopening anytime soon. Joe, any thoughts on Cheers?
No, I never played at Cheers. I was pretty outspoken against Cheers and the things from day one, and I sort of feel bad about it now. I think in a way I was proven right. I don't think that they really had the best management going. I sort of feel bad saying that. But too many cooks in the kitchen. They basically have a philosophy of throwing everything against the wall and trying to get something to stick. They brought in a bunch of players as operators or advocates, and they just needed one person who really knew what they were doing running the place. And honestly, I feel like if I were to take a poker room in that market and run things, it probably would have been successful. But yeah, I just think that it was never going to work.
Interesting. All right, so let's check and see if we've got any legitimate questions here. So no, we don't. So a couple questions that I guess you wanted to ask me. So let's go ahead and fire these off here.
I mean, I don't know if you really want me to. Do you?
Fire them off. This is the Poker Uncensored podcast, so we're not going to be afraid to
All
do
right.
hard hitting.
So when we went to Twin River, we remember we went to the strip club together.
Oh boy.
Do you want me to keep going with the question or not?
Oh boy. All right. So we'll move on here. So this must be a Chris Paolino troll initiative here. All right. So does anybody else have any additional questions for us? So I would actually, maybe it would be fun. I could tell the story of how I won thousands of dollars at poker at the casino, took it to the gentleman's club. I made it rain like crazy to the point where actually they threw me out because I was throwing so much stuff in the air. They were like, "No, you can't make it rain that hard. You got to go."
That sounds like a made-up story.
I mean, is it made up? Because I could see it happening. Let's say you chuck money and throw it in the air, and it like hits the bouncer the wrong way. He gets pissed off. He throws you out. That could go down. So, let's see here. Does anybody else have any questions here for us? So
I see they're asking what Slice did to me. Slice is just a troll.
yeah,
And he did.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, so Slice, aka Chris Paolino, he's essentially a New England poker troll. He just loves to troll people. He's a huge internet troll, and he can be found apparently at Mohegan Sun playing 2-5. So if he's ever trolled you and you're really annoyed at him, the best thing you can do is head on down to Mohegan, sit at the 2-5 game, and just take all of his money, and that'll pretty much be the way to get back at him. And then when you've done,
I didn't even know he was playing poker.
Yeah, and hey, when you take all his money, right, what you want to do is tell him, hey, there's an ATM over in the corner. You can go get some more, and I'll take that too. So then let's see. Joe, where can people find you these days? So if they're trying to get in touch or they want to see you.
I mean, I'm pretty much at Encore playing 1-3 almost every day. I do play some 2-5 and 2-2 PLO, but mostly, every single day. Whenever I'm awake, sometimes that's really early in the morning, sometimes it's late at night. I'll be sitting playing 1-3 at Encore, and I've been there. I don't know. I've probably taken less than 10 days off since it opened.
Wow, that is 7. I mean, then again, I guess if you're playing this for a living, they've been open for roughly 2 months, and so taking off 10 days is not, it's sort of like I would say actually taking off 10 days is pretty intense, right? Most people that work a full-time job, they've got at least 2 days a week off, and so at this point they would have taken off like 10 to 12 days. So you're putting in a lot of effort trying to make a living down there. And then if people are looking to find you on the internet, where should they go?
I'm sorry, what's that?
So if people are looking to find you on the internet, where should they go? Joe, you there? So this is that pristine opportunity where your guest gets to plug like their Twitter account and then pick up followers, but unfortunately, he's seems to have been disconnected again. So, needless to say, I'm Matt Solon. You can find me on the internet on Twitter at Matt Solon. You can also find me playing poker throughout the East Coast. I will be at the Borgata playing on Thursday evening. If anybody wants to come play the tournament there, I encourage you to join. And that will be a wrap up for today's Poker Uncensored podcast. We'll be back for episode 3 at some point in the future. The date's not yet been set. We'll definitely have one happening by October when the World Poker Tour events are going on at Maryland Live. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you weren't able to catch the entire live podcast, we will have a link on YouTube that you can tune into. Everybody have a good evening. And once again, thank you. And I want to thank our management team that recently took over as well. And that is all. Good night, everyone.